E.T. phone home?
E.T. phone home.
And they'll come.
Come home.
Hey there, Retro Games fans, this is Andy C from Pieces of 8-Bit. This week we're going to be talking about a very important game. Last week we talked about another set of very important games, some arcade ports onto the Atari 2600. Those were Space Invaders, Pac-Man, Missile Command and Centipede. 4 absolute stone cold gaming classics, and even if you don't like the games particularly, or even if you've not played them, although I find that hard to believe, they are absolutely up there as incredibly important games and live in the psyche of every gamer, and they deservedly take their place in the top sort of 20, 30, 40, whatever you want to call it, of games ever made. They're incredibly important titles, and rightfully so. They're great fun and they're great to play, and you can return to them anytime, pick them up and play them. Whether you pick the 2600 ports of those versions of those games up, that is obviously a different question, but they are incredibly important games. This week's game is important probably for all the wrong reasons. It's largely considered to be the worst game ever made. And the game I'm talking about, of course, as you know from the title, is E.T. the Extra Terrestrial, the game. This was obviously a game game creation from the amazing 1982 movie E.T. the Extra Terrestrial. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk a little bit about the game and how it came to be, a little bit about how you play it. I'm going to have a bit of a playthrough and just sort of demonstrate how you play the game, and I'll do my usual thing that I've been doing the last few sessions, which is that I will play the game and then I'll do a bit of a voiceover and talk about it, just so I can give you a good feel for it. And then I'll talk a little bit about the end as to whether I think it is deserved of the rather conspicuous title of being the worst game ever made. Is it even indeed very fair at all? Especially through 2025 eyes, been a lot of games, a lot of things that have happened since 1982 in the world of gaming. Does it still deserve that title? And should you in fact go back and have a look at it yourself and have a go? So all of that will be coming up. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to have a look at the game itself, the game history, I should say, how it came to be, why it managed to collect this title, and then we'll dive into the gameplay a little bit later on. So stick with me, I'll see you on the other side. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about the game itself. So as many of you will know, I am doing a month with series with the Atari 2600 Plus at the moment. So my month with series is basically I will live with a console for a whole month, and I'll see what it's like to live with a retro console or a retro inspired console. The 2600 Plus is a retro inspired console. It's a reinvention of the original 1977 Atari 2600. It takes the original cartridges. So I'm living with that at the moment. Next week will be the actual review of how that has been over the last month. As part of that, I've been playing obviously 2600 games throughout the month of February, and this game that I'm talking about, E.T., is obviously also an Atari 2600 game. Atari saw an opportunity to really cash in on this idea of movie to game crossover. They'd seen the success of Star Wars, and they wanted to continue with that success. E.T. was a Spielberg movie. Spielberg himself was really very well known by this point, and cranking out amazing movies. E.T. the movie itself is obviously an incredible movie, and if you haven't seen it, I would definitely encourage you to watch it. It's really, for me, the start of the 80s golden era of family movies. It's got everything. It's got happiness. It's got laughter. It's got sadness. It's fantastic. And kids and adults enjoyed it equally, and it has really stood the test of time. I could talk about 80s family movies all day long. There are so many in there, and some of my absolute favourite movies of all time in that decade, and E.T. would definitely feature in that list somewhere. So obviously Atari wanted to make a game off the back of this movie. They thought it was going to be a big success. They had a relatively short amount of time to do it. They paid apparently between $20 to $25 million for the rights to create the game, and they brought in a chap. They got a chap called Howard Warshaw to be the main developer for the game, and he was given 5 weeks to develop it. So already you can see why we might be running into a problem here. And he was apparently paid or offered $200,000 and an all expenses paid trip to Hawaii to get this done. Yeah, he obviously had a go at it, and he had this idea for a sort of six-sided world, you know, where you could really interact with the character, and you know, you could really sort of love the character that you're playing. He took the idea to Spielberg, in fact, and Spielberg said, I don't like it, can't you make it a little bit more like Pac-Man? And maybe he was onto something, because yeah, history tells us that the game itself wasn't particularly good. So yeah, in fact, when it came out, it was universally panned by the critics. There were 1 or 2 positive reviews. I think, you know, people considered it to be relatively innovative, but for the most part, the reviews were absolutely shocking. The gameplay was janky, it was boring, it didn't make any sense, it was really hard. And it was so bad, in fact, that Atari, there was an urban legend for many years that Atari basically buried all of these cartridges that weren't sold into a landfill. Now, initially it did actually sell quite well, but unfortunately what happened was it sold really well, and then people returned the cartridges. That's how bad it was. They said, I hate this, I don't want it anymore, I want my money back, which is quite unheard of, actually. And so it was so bad for Atari, in fact, that it actually is largely considered to be a big contributing factor to the 1983 game crash in the US, and which almost killed the gaming industry stone cold dead there and then. And yes, this urban legend that these games were all in landfill was actually became a fact sometime later. Not all that long ago, actually, they discovered a landfill with these cartridges in. Not just E.T. cartridges, there are a whole bunch of other ones in there as well. And in fact, Pac-Man, which I played last week, although Pac-Man itself obviously is an amazing port, and on the 2600 Ms Pac-Man is a much better game. But the original Pac-Man port was actually largely considered to be pretty terrible as well, and that, plus a bunch of other kind of poor titles, were the contributing factor. So E.T. was not the only reason, but it was considered a pretty big reason. In terms of gameplay itself, I have played through, and you'll see me play through again in a minute. Isn't great, but yeah, you'll see why. Basically, the premise of the game is that you've got to kind of go around and collect telephone pieces from around the maps. They're quite confusing maps. I get lost quite easily, but then, you know, a lot of games from that era, that's sort of, you know, that's not unusual. I mean, I get lost playing games like Adventure, and that's considered to be obviously a classic. So you've got to collect the telephone pieces. You can also collect Reese's Pieces as you go round, and they will give you extra points at the end. And the adults in the game generally will either steal the stuff off you, or they will take you back home, essentially, and sort of put you in a, it looks like a cage, I guess. I'll show you when we play the game. Once you've collected all the telephone pieces, the idea is that E.T. will then phone home, and his ship comes, and you get a timer, and you have to get to his ship before the timer runs out, and then that's the game completed. Now, the difficult part, the part I think really irritates people, and you'll see this when we do the playthrough, is that to find the parts, you kind of have to drop into these sort of ditches or these pits, and then you have to get back out again, and the mechanics for that really aren't great. So what happens is you sort of drop into the pit, and then you try and sort of levitate your way back out again, and sometimes he just falls back down again. It's quite frustrating, and you just sort of have to do the same thing over and over again to try and find these telephone parts. So, and it gets quite annoying as well. The adults sort of come and just steal bits off you all the time, and they're almost impossible to escape. So that bit becomes quite frustrating as well. So there's a lot of frustrating elements to the game. I think with a little bit more time and a little bit more honing, I think it could have been good. I think the concept of the game could be quite good. But let's not get too into the weeds of whether it was good or bad, because we'll do that through the gameplay and afterwards. So let's get on and have a look at the game itself. And you can decide for yourself what you think. So yeah, let's fire up the game. I'll see you on the other side. Alright, so here we go. This is E.T. I played for about 8 or 9 minutes, so we'll just play through until I run out of lives. So there we go. You can just about hear in the background the original the soundtrack. So E.T.'s come down in his little space rocket, and as you can see, we are in the forest here. So the idea is we're going to go and try and collect these phone pieces, and luckily for us, straight away, we fall into a pit and we find one piece immediately. That was kind of lucky. There is like a little sort of guide at the top there that will tell you, I think it tells you where to find things, but it's really not that helpful, and it comes up with a whole bunch of symbols that really, like that one, that's a little space invader there. I don't know what any of this stuff means. I'm sure if I had the instructions it might help a little bit. But you can see the arrow changing as I'm walking through the woods. As soon as I get onto the next page, I fall straight into a pit, and it's this really that I think people really objected to. It's a real nuisance, and you can see there straight away that you come out the pit, and if you walk in the wrong direction, it's not obvious which way you need to walk. You fall straight back down again, and I'll probably do it again. Oh, I didn't. I'm going to pick up a little Reese's piece there, which I think gives me extra points. The guy in the corner there, the guy in the sort of brown jacket, he'll come and take stuff off me, specifically. I think he starts by taking all the little Reese's Pieces things away from me. He's just sort of stuck in the corner at the moment, which is kind of good. The idea is, as I'm playing, I'm supposed to sort of fall into each of these pits and then find the little bits of telephone that I need to phone home. Which all sounds great, but it's very difficult to remember which ones you've already fallen into. And of course the problem is here is it's incredibly difficult to get out of them. I remember the first time I played this game, in fact, that I couldn't work it out. I just got stuck, and I kind of got fed up with it, and I just gave up, really. It's so easy to just fall down, and then yeah, you sort of end up back in the forest again. They do seem to be, each of the pages with the pits in does seem to have a slightly different design. So I think probably if you played the game enough times, you'd probably sort of work it out and maybe draw a map. So that guy there that was just coming across the screen, you'll see him in a minute. He's like one of the scientists, and he's going to take me away back to, I assume, back to Elliot's house. Oh, found another bit of telephone. And I have to sort of kind of start there, and he'll take a little bit of the phone thing away from me. Yeah, this is another problem as well. It kind of gets stuck from time to time. There we go. He's figured it out. Let me see. So that E at the top there, that's my telephone so far. I've managed to collect about, in total, about 4 pieces in any one game, but normally I'm kind of struggling with it a little bit. Oh yeah, so he touched me there, so he took a little bit of my phone away. He didn't take my Reese's Pieces away. Would have preferred if he'd done that. So yeah, I don't know if you can see at the top there, that little sort of C. That's a bit of the phone, and that will build up as you collect things as you go. Other things to note as well down the bottom, so that 9 is the number of these Reese's Pieces I've got, and that's the maximum you can collect. And you can see me trying to collect another one there, and that was the maximum amount. And then the bigger number, that's currently at about 2,900, that's my energy. So if that runs to 0, basically I'll lose a life. Elliot will come and rescue me, which is kind of weird because I've only just come down in my spaceship, so I'm not quite sure how Elliot knows who I am at this point, but we'll sort of gloss over that a little bit as well. So yeah, there's me struggling to get out of these pits again, and the guy in the brown coat seems to be stuck at the bottom. That's going to make me fall straight down there. So what else can we find? Oh, this guy's so annoying. This is the other thing as well, is that it's just so irritating because you kind of navigate your way around, and then the two sort of people that can catch you will catch you pretty quick, and you find yourself struggling to get all the bits and pieces that you need. Oh, it's just so annoying trying to get out. It's like, do I go forward? Do I go back? Do I go left, right? It's kind of a bit of a clue. You have to sort of stop at the top. And then sometimes you've got to move in a direction that you don't even necessarily think you need to. You can take me back here if you want. I'm already there. There we go. Yeah, so again, oh no, this was a bit that I hadn't seen before. There we go, nothing in that one. So I ran out of energy there, so that that's Elliot. You can kind of tell from the little stripy jumper that he's got on there. And I get 1500 energy back again, which goes pretty quick. So once you've run out of that initial, I think it's 10,000. Once you've run out of that initial amount of energy, to be honest, it's pretty much game over. You can't really get much more done unless you're fairly advanced into the game at this point. You're pretty stuffed. A bit of telephone there. That's excellent. What I also don't know is if you collect a bit of telephone, then that gets taken away from you, whether you then get other bits that you can find elsewhere, or whether once you've had bits taken away from you, whether that's game over. It's not very clear. So I'm going to run out of energy again in just a moment. I'm going to fall down the hole again, and it's going to come and rescue me. And the thing is, I mean, with a game of this age, you can sort of forgive the animation a little bit. And to be honest, I mean, you know, compared to other games on the 2600 at the time, you know, graphically, it's okay. It's just a bit confusing, really. You know, E.T. looks quite sweet. The animation's okay. It's just really confusing as to what you're supposed to do, where you're supposed to go, and it for me, the really irritating part about this game is constantly falling into these pits, not remembering which ones you've been in before, and then not being able to get out. Oh, you see, now that's impossible. I've got caught immediately there. I had no idea that guy was there. He just caught me straight away. So far I've managed to catch one bit of telephone, and then there's this sort of thing. I don't even know what that is. And then I immediately ran out of energy anyway, so it doesn't matter. Don't know what that was. Whatever it was is gone now. That gives me a little smiley face if I walk over it. I don't know what it is. I don't seem to pick it up. It doesn't seem to impact my energy at all. It just puts a little smiley face on the screen. Yeah, I really don't know what that was. I kind of walked over that a couple of times. Bearing in mind on the Atari 2600, of course, you've only got one fire button, so there's really not a lot of buttons. You know, it's not like in modern sort of PlayStation games where you sort of walk over something and you press all the different buttons until something picks up or something happens. If the fire button doesn't work, then really there's nothing more to do. So I'm really not sure what's going on there. Now, are we actually reaching the end here? Because I think we're going to run out of energy any second. It always seems to be in a pit as well. I've never actually run out of energy on the surface. I think it's because you spend most of your time sitting in those pits on the ground trying to get out and work it. Oh, fall again. It's a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. I think if that wasn't a problem, I think if that sort of detection of where E.T. is in relation to the hole that you fall down, if that was better, I think the game might actually be better. If there was some way of marking whether you'd been into a particular hole to check stuff out, that might help too. There's a couple of little improvements that could have just been made that would have made this game eminently more playable. I think that might be my last life. So there we go, back to home. E.T.'s essentially died, so I now got to go back to the start and start again. So let's go and have a look. Let's go and have a talk about what I thought about that. So there you go, that was my playthrough of E.T. the Extra Terrestrial, the game. Played only about 7 minutes of that until I ran out of lives. What did I think? Is it worthy of the worst game ever made title? It's not good. I mean, it is not good. And I don't want to jump on the bandwagon here and just say, oh, it's rubbish because everybody else says it's rubbish. I mean, it has some merit. I think there are some things in the game, you know, that could just have been that little bit better that would have made it a better game. You know, so I mentioned there through the gameplay, you know, if you knew which pits you'd fallen into already, I think that would be quite good. I think the edge detection of where those pits are, those holes are, I think would also have helped. You know, I think the big frustration with that game, I think the thing that undermined it the most is the fact that you fall into those pits and then you spend sort of 3 or 4 goes trying to get out again. So I think that would have been, I think just those couple of things would have made the game that little bit better. And when you think about games like Adventure on the 2600, you know, that is just exploration and kind of, you know, it's very basic graphics, so it's hard to kind of work out where you are. And that's just how games were back then. So I don't think necessarily that is the problem. I think just the general game mechanics are problematic. You can tell that it's a rushed game. Conceptually, I don't think it's all that bad. I think it's, you know, like the idea of what you're supposed to do. It's quite a simple, small game. You collect the telephone parts, you phone home, you get back to your ship. Yeah, that's quite simple and straightforward, and I think fits in with the sort of genre of games at the time. It's just, it's the problems, the faults just make it very, very difficult and incredibly frustrating to play. I think that's the key. Games should be enjoyable to play. That is outrageously frustrating, and for no good reason. You know, it's not like a hard boss which is frustrating, which irritates you after a while. It's just not well enough thought through, and it's just not really complete enough. So is it the worst game of all time? Well, I can't think of a game that's worse. There's been a lot of games that have come since, and I'm sure there are some games that I've played in recent years where I could probably go back and go, actually, do you know what? That really is terrible. But I think probably at the time, I think it was probably, unfortunately, a deserved title that it got. And you know what? I think it's important to remember this game because it teaches us a lot about games development and, you know, the need to do things properly and the need to make sure that things are right and not just shovel out rubbish. And you know, we see it a lot more nowadays where I think we've sort of gone back a little bit in terms of games quality, where we can ship a game and then 5 minutes later, you know what it's like, you put a game on the PlayStation 5, you put the disc in and immediately there's an update to fix it. So we have seen games come out that have been that have not been the greatest quality, and in fact actually one of my favourite games, No Man's Sky, was a game that came out that really wasn't quite finished yet. The advantage that we have nowadays, of course, is if something like No Man's Sky came out years ago, that would have been it. You know, that game could just very well have easily been in the top 20 worst games ever. But the fact that Hello Games have had the opportunity to improve the game and update the game to one of the game, you know, to what is now an amazing game, a fantastic game that I've sunk hundreds of hours into. You know, so we do have a bit of an advantage there nowadays compared to then. You know, you can't help feeling that E.T. might have come out and then a week later there'd be a patch and we'd see something a little bit better and we'd see a few little improvements that would make the game better. But that isn't what happened, and instead it was consigned to urban legend about being buried in a landfill, which then turned out obviously to be true. So yeah, unfortunately, I think that game is, yeah, it's just really bad. It's not great. You know, I try to see some of the positives in it, but there's just so much stuff that's irritating. You know, like I said, the holes, the people chasing you. I mean, even with the people chasing you, it'd be great if you had a bit of a cool-off period when you start the game. You know, for the first minute or two, you know, you don't get chased by anyone, to give you a fighting chance of being able to find the bits and pieces. But it is what it is, and that game will forever be remembered as one of the worst games ever produced, and that's a shame. And I probably have some serious sympathy for the engineer that was put to task to do that, because they had so little time to do it. That in itself is a cautionary tale, and someone who has worked in software for many years, you know, like that's an important and cautionary tale for us all to learn from. So yes, there you go. There's E.T. Should you go revisit it? Probably not. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. There are so many better games on the 2600. If you've got the 2600 Plus, there are so many games out there that you can go and play that are just better. But yeah, E.T. is not a game that I would necessarily recommend going to play. So yeah, so that's my thoughts on E.T. Maybe not the worst game ever made, but certainly in the time it was created, I would say that it probably was. Okay, so that's it for this week. So coming up on the channel next week, we will have the 2600 Plus a month with review. So I will reveal what it's been like to live with the Atari 2600 Plus in my living room, whether it's worth going and checking it out. One thing to bear in mind, just as at the time of recording, I had a look on Amazon and they are down to about £52. So I don't know what that is, what the prices of them are in the US. But if you do want to get yourself a 2600 Plus, I would strongly suggest going and having a look now. Don't quote me on that price. It might go up by the time this recording has gone out, but certainly last time I checked, it was even cheaper than I'd paid for it, and I thought I got a bargain at £60. So so that's the 2600 Plus review coming up, and then of course I will be revealing what will be coming up next month in my Month With series. The usual stuff will be happening. Obviously, I've got a Ridge Racer event to do for Lap Time Challenge, so I'm looking forward to that. There's always a Lap Time Challenge to do, so looking forward to getting that done. And then yeah, it's not going to be too long till I'll be looking at handheld for my Month With series. So I'm doing a bit of travelling in April, so that will be coming up as well. So keep tuned. Thanks ever so much for watching today. If you do enjoy these videos, please do hit that like and subscribe button. I really do appreciate your support. Hope you found that video interesting today. that just leaves me to say thanks for watching. I will see you around. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.